Hi, everyone. I'm Jim Hewling, and it's a real pleasure to welcome you to this episode of Execution Insights, the podcast. Now, today, we're going to be talking about a role that is often misunderstood. In fact, it's frequently overlooked and yet absolutely essential to every organization's success. And of course, you can tell we're already talking about middle managers. Now, in all the work that I do as an executive coach, I find some companies who see middle managers as just a layer that we might possibly need to remove or be able to remove someday. And others suddenly realize that they actually can't function without them. Well, the truth is one I want to shine a bright light on today. The best middle managers have never been more valuable than they are right now. And this is not because they supervise tasks, it's because they connect people. In fact, when you think about it, they are the only leaders in the organization who touch both the front line and the executive team every single day. They translate strategy into action, right? They are the connective tissue that actually keeps the organization healthy. And I want to tell you today a story that will bring this lesson home for you in a way I hope you'll never forget. It's a story about a hospital that was in trouble. You see, a few years ago, I was working with the senior leaders of a major metropolitan hospital. In fact, the largest single hospital in the area of the United States where I currently reside. And they were facing a very frightening trend. Operating room incidents were on the rise and they were going up fast. Now, remember, I'm not talking about paperwork errors. These were mistakes that could potentially put the life of a patient at risk. The senior team that brought me in cared deeply about this problem, of course, and they had already tried everything they knew. They instituted new policies, they tightened their checklist, they even instituted financial incentives for improvements in the error rate. And of course, they had banners on all the wall and celebration lunches anytime there was an improvement. I mean, literally, they had done everything they could think of, and all of it was thoughtful, and all of it was well-intentioned, but none of it was working. And that's when I asked them in a meeting of the entire senior leadership team, who have you talked to so far who was the closest to the work? Now, in that moment, to be fair to them, they paused. They were actually uncertain how to respond because they hadn't spoken to anyone down on the front line. In fact, in that moment, the silence was deafening. So they invited me to meet privately with all the frontline teams and the middle managers without any senior leadership in the room so that everyone would feel completely free to express any idea or concern they had. And that particular decision, which I give them lots of credit for doing, well, that was a decision that changed everything. Because the moral of this story is what happens mostly in organization is that truth comes from the middle. So once the middle managers and their frontline teams all felt safe, then the people on the team spoke candidly. They said to me, Jim, what we're seeing are all preventable mistakes. I mean, there are things like we have the wrong surgical tray prepared, or we have unclear laterality, or we're missing surgical notes. They're all small things, but they are things that lead to big consequences. And I'll never forget the moment when a very seasoned nurse manager, one of those middle managers who had been there forever and seen it all, she raised her hand and she said in a very calm voice, clear eyes, full heart, so to speak, she said, Jim, we could prevent so many of these errors if we just did a second confirmation of the procedure we're about to perform. And if we did it out loud every time on everything. Now think about this for a minute. A multi-million-dollar problem that, if left unchecked, could represent a threat to the existence of the very hospital we were trying to work in. And the solution did not involve a new system or new software or, frankly, any added cost. The solution was simply a moment of clarity and thoughtfulness before every procedure. Now, I'm not for a moment trying to say that they weren't clear or they weren't thoughtful, but I am saying that something was missing because the incidents were on the rise. And instead of looking for a complex solution to a large problem, well, the answer that saved them came in the simplest possible way. So, on a regular basis, that second confirmation began to catch small mistakes that would have otherwise gotten into the operating room and possibly put one of our patients at risk. And within months, the rise in incidents had flattened out. And then I will never forget the day it turned downward. I got a phone call from the chief nursing officer of the hospital, and she said there was a celebration going on that could be heard on every single floor. And over the next few months, not only did the trend continue, they reached the lowest incident rate in the entire country by the end of that year. Now, the key here that I want you to remember and hear in this story is that it was not because of something imagined in a boardroom. It was because a middle manager who could see what was truly happening had the courage and the openness to speak up. And let's be very clear, she was the real hero in this story. It wasn't me. In fact, it had very little to do with me, and it wasn't the senior team. It was that middle manager who was willing to speak the truth, who saw what was hiding in plain sight, and who knew how to keep people safe. I mean, it's no exaggeration that in that moment, what she did changed lives. So, what do we take from this story in this episode of the podcast of Execution Insights? Well, it's simply this. If you're a senior leader listening to this message, and that's the vast majority of people who tune into this podcast, I say this with the deepest respect. You cannot solve your biggest challenges from the boardroom. In fact, you can't solve them at all without the wisdom of the leaders in the middle. They are your most valuable resource. So, how do you and I, as senior leaders, unlock that wisdom? Well, here are 3 commitments that I promise will transform your organization. They're the very 3 things we used in this hospital system and that I've been able to see work all over the country. Number 1, invest in the growth of middle managers. You know, there's a great tendency to just train middle managers to manage processes instead of coaching them to lead people and to lead with influence and empathy and courage. We've got to reverse that trend and make this a real and ongoing investment. Because when middle managers grow, teams grow and results grow. So that's number 1. Number 2, have their back. You know, when a middle manager brings you an uncomfortable truth, don't make it awkward. Don't criticize or demean them for it. Celebrate it. Don't silence it. In fact, think about middle managers for a moment. When they come to you with a difficult truth, they often feel that they are risking their entire sense of security and their jobs just to protect the organization and the people that you serve. So our job as senior leaders is to let them know every time that we see and appreciate their courage. And third, and last, and most important, create safe channels for truth to flow throughout the organization. I mean, middle managers see what you and I cannot from the executive position. But if they don't feel safe to say it, we will never actually know it or be able to act on it. In fact, in my experience as an executive coach, more often than not, insights die in silence. So what we have to do is make it safe for truth to rise. So as we close this podcast, here's a question I'd like you to think about today. Who are the leaders in the middle on your team? And what breakthrough might you unlock if you simply ask, what is it they're seeing? Because the answer to our biggest challenge, gosh, it may already exist. And it may not be in a brand new strategy or a new slide deck or a dashboard or up in the executive floor. No, not at all. It may very well be sitting there right now in the heart and mind of a leader standing in the middle. Because managers don't just hold the space between, they are the force that holds everything together. And they are never alone as long as you and I choose to see them and support them and believe in them. So today, I want to thank you for spending this time with me, leader to leader and heart to heart. And I hope this message has been both informational, but valuable as well. And until the next time, keep leading with courage and with humility and with love. And I'll see you in the next episode of Execution Insights, the podcast.